On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will discuss the allegations against new wide receiver Antonio Brown. We will recap the Patriots' Week 1 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers and preview their upcoming Week 2 matchup with the Miami Dolphins. Welcome to this week's NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Doug Kide, joined as always by Zach Hawks. Zach, how are you doing?
Never a dull day down here, Doug.
Yeah, almost too much has happened since our last podcast, so I think we're just going to scrap this and get out of here. Just kidding. So just to recap all of the events that we will be talking about since the last time that we did a podcast, there's probably some things late in last week that I'm forgetting, but Patriots signed Antonio Brown on Saturday. The Patriots...
They agreed to terms on Saturday.
Right.
Officially assigned him on Monday.
So, but the news first broke that Antonio Brown was coming to New England on Saturday. The Patriots demolished the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday night in their season opener. On Monday, like you said, the Patriots officially signed Antonio Brown. On Tuesday, the Patriots traded Demaryius Thomas.
To the Jets.
To the Jets, of all teams. First trade Bill Belichick's made with the Jets since becoming the Patriots head coach. And then on Tuesday night, it was discovered that Antonio Brown was accused of rape and sexual assault from an incidents that stemmed from June 2017 and May 2018. So we're going to have to start off on that, the non-football stuff, and then we will get into football stuff a little bit later. But obviously these are very serious accusations. Antonio Brown was in practice today on Wednesday, which I guess was kind of a slight surprise, but he is on the roster. He is eligible to play. It's possible that he could be placed on the commissioner's exempt list before Week 2, but if not, then the fact that Antonio Brown was practicing on Wednesday seems like the Patriots are, at least for now, going ahead with him as a wide receiver on this team, which is a bit of a controversial decision given the accusations levied against him.
Yeah, it is at this point very difficult to predict whether he will be out there on the field on Sunday. That could be the Patriots' decision, or if he is placed on that commissioner exempt list, he would be ineligible to play or practice until he's removed from that. That has not happened yet at the time of this recording. It's unclear whether that will happen. So as of now, again, up in the air whether he'll be on the field on Sunday. But I agree with you that it was a bit of a surprise that he was out there on at practice today on Wednesday. We should note that these are allegations. He has not been charged with anything at this point.
It's a civil lawsuit.
It is a civil lawsuit at this point. There hasn't been any criminal investigation that has been reported, at least. So at this point, it is just allegations against Antonio Brown. But yeah, this is a situation that could drag on for quite a while. I know these civil lawsuits typically take a long time to resolve themselves unless either a settlement is reached or the kind of accusing side decides to drop the lawsuit. So I don't know. This could be something that we deal with throughout the season, and then that begs the question: how do the Patriots deal with this throughout the season? Do they just sort of let the legal process play out and kind of treat Antonio Brown as if he were any other player in the meantime, or do they alter that in some way? I don't know. I don't really know at this point. It's tough to draw any conclusions with the information that we currently have. So yeah, it's going to have to be kind of a wait and see thing with this, I think.
Yeah, I feel like they would almost be. It would be easier on the Patriots if Roger Goodell did just put Antonio Brown on that exempt list, because then it would be out of their hands. Until that happens, everything is up to them. And if the NFL has not suspended this player, if the NFL has not put Antonio Brown on the exempt list, then the Patriots will probably feel like they almost have to play him. Clearly, he's one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. Personally, and this is easy for me to say this since there's not any pressure on me to say this, but I probably would not play him on Sunday against Miami Dolphins, just in case more information did come out. The Patriots don't need Antonio Brown to beat the Dolphins. They could easily make the excuse that Antonio Brown hasn't picked up enough of the offense yet to play in that game. I mean, when the Patriots acquired Josh Gordon in a trade, they didn't play him in that first week he was on the team against the Detroit Lions. So it's not as if there's nothing to say that Antonio Brown would be ready to play this game or wouldn't be ready to play this game. So I think just for them, as kind of a safeguard, I probably wouldn't play him against the Dolphins. But if he's not on that exempt list, and if the Patriots think that he can help their team, then that's a pretty difficult decision to make. But like I said, with Josh Gordon last year, there is at least a precedent there where a wide receiver who's acquired the week of a game doesn't play.
Definitely. I wouldn't even have called it a sure thing that he was going to play in this game, even before all this stuff broke last night. As you mentioned, the Patriots did not play Josh Gordon in his first game last season. A little bit of a different situation because Josh Gordon hadn't played football in so long, even though he did play one game with the Browns before he came over here. And then they sort of...
To be fair, Antonio Brown hasn't played football in a while either, though.
True, very true. And then the Patriots did bring Josh Gordon along slowly. I believe he only played 18 snaps in each of his first 2 games, and then he was kind of established as a full-time starter after that and went from there. So it's unclear how the Patriots were planning on handling Antonio Brown even before all of this broke. As you mentioned, I really don't think that they're going to need him out there to beat the Miami Dolphins, who really look like the worst team in the NFL at the moment. But I don't know, it just adds an extra layer to the concerns that were already there about Antonio Brown, just from a locker room sort of culture distraction standpoint. I thought some of those were overblown at first, just because the Patriots locker room is so kind of veteran heavy and has so many leaders in there. I did think that they would be able to sort of steer the ship in the right direction, even if Antonio Brown does kind of continue some of his antics that he's had elsewhere. But this kind of adds an extra layer to that situation, an extra sort of personal layer to that you can't really understand. We can't even really understand. You have to kind of be in there every day on a daily basis. Just even something as simple as Antonio Brown wanting to wear number 84. Ben Watson currently has number 84. Is Ben Watson going to be willing to give up that number to a guy who is in the middle of all of what Antonio Brown is in right now? I don't know the answer to that, but I have to imagine it makes that conversation a little bit more difficult than it would have been previously. So that's just a very minor thing, but I don't. It definitely makes this transition process much, much, much more difficult for Antonio Brown.
We are recording this in between Belichick's news conference, which happened this morning. We have not yet entered the locker room. On Sunday, after the Patriots did beat the Steelers, we'll get into that in a second, Bill Belichick refused to talk about Antonio Brown because he wasn't on the team yet, but the team did talk about Antonio Brown. Bill Belichick said very little about Antonio Brown this morning in his news conference. He said that they're taking the situation very seriously, but he was very brusque when asked. Is that the right word? Brusque?
Brusque, yeah, brusque? Kind of quickly dismissive.
He was pretty brusque when asked any questions about Antonio Brown in the news conference. Basically just saying that he has nothing more to say about it, that the Patriots made a statement on Tuesday night to address the allegations and the accusation. I personally think that Belichick probably could have handled the situation maybe a little more sensitively. Mm-hmm. This isn't exactly like we're talking about deflated footballs or some sort of football matter. It's a lot more serious than that. It's a lot more personal than that. And I was a little bit surprised that he was so brusque, I guess would be the word that I would choose to use again in the news conference. It only lasted 4 minutes. There were no questions about the Dolphins, which for me I totally understand because we're not writing about the Dolphins today. We're writing about Antonio Brown. It would be pretty pointless to ask Bill Belichick what he thinks about Albert Wilson as a Dolphins wide receiver or Eric Rowe, the former Patriots cornerback, because no one's going to write about that on Wednesday anyway. We're writing about Antonio Brown. So, but no, I mean, it was certainly a circus like many things are.
I mean, reporters in there wouldn't have been doing their job if they weren't asking these questions. I mean, maybe if this press conference went on for another 5-10 minutes, then maybe you'd start to see some Dolphins questions filter in there. But this is easily the biggest story in kind of the Patriots landscape right now, and it's a story that involves a lot of questions for the team. Did the team know about these accusations and allegations in this impending lawsuit before they signed Antonio Brown and before they kind of agreed to terms with Antonio Brown?
That's the big question.
That is the biggest question right now. A Patriots spokesman said to the New York Times last night that they were unaware of these when they signed Antonio Brown, but there had been whispers about this out on the internet and kind of pretty deep down there on the internet, but still out there over the weekend, even before Brown was released by the Raiders. So this, to some, this did not come as a kind of complete blindside. I mean, I personally didn't see any of those reports.
It was Incarcerated Bob. You might have heard of him. You might not have. He was kind of a lot bigger profile maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But on Saturday morning, he released screenshots of a DM conversation between Antonio Brown and a woman. And the woman knew about these impending allegations that were going to be coming out against Antonio Brown. So it was out there. Like you said, I didn't know about it. I also wasn't about to pay Antonio Brown $9 million guaranteed. So, yes, I should have known about it. It's my job to know about that. I'm also blocked by Incarcerated Bob for some reason, so I don't know how I would have seen it. I didn't see it. But the Patriots apparently also didn't see it, which kind of calls into question how much they are looking at social media before making some of these decisions. Bill Belichick has been known to completely dismiss social media. He calls it Instaface and all those other names that he has for it. But, I mean, it's important, and this highlights its importance, because if the Patriots had seen that on Saturday morning, if they had seen that these allegations of rape might have been coming out against Antonio Brown, then maybe they don't make that decision, or at least maybe they talk to Antonio Brown about it. Maybe they talk to Drew Rosenhaus about it. And it seems like, based on all the reports out there, and from, like you said, what the Patriots said to the New York Times, they didn't know about this before signing Antonio Brown. So that's kind of a red flag right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect Bill Belichick to personally know about this beforehand. I don't think he follows Incarcerated Bob on Twitter. But, I mean, NFL teams hire people and employ people for this exact reason. I mean, both for players that they're going out to look to sign, and even players that are probably currently on their team. Their teams employ people and whole departments of people to know these things, to know these kind of the quote-unquote dirt on everybody.
Right.
And for something like this that wasn't even kind of, it wouldn't have even been a case where they had to go out and sort of ask people and interview people about it. It was out on social media and out online. So it's hard to believe that nobody in the organization came across this at some point over the weekend.
I mean, the other thing is, one last thing on Antonio Brown, then we can move on. If I had seen that on Saturday morning, I would not have written about it, because it's an Incarcerated Bob, and because no one really thinks of him as a viable source. For the Patriots, maybe they would have looked at that the same way. Maybe they did look at that the same way and said, this could easily be fake. We don't know what this is. We can't take this seriously. But
it should at least spark kind of further investigation.
Right, a conversation or investigation or something there. And I sent the tweets out, or I highlighted the tweets last night about Incarcerated Bob, what he had put out there. And even I started to get some blowback of, come on, this isn't a viable source, all that. Well, at this point, it's happened. Like, we know that those accusations have hit the surface now with this lawsuit. So, I mean, you can call Incarcerated Bob a not viable source however much you want, but he knew about this and he put this out there before anyone else did. So, and at this point, they were viable, and they clearly should have been looked into a little bit more. Anything else before we get into it?
I think that sounds like just about it right now. I mean, unless we want to just touch quickly on there was a report from the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office which covers Pittsburgh, where Antonio Brown obviously lived for close to a decade. Initially, a report from them that they were looking into some of the investigations in this lawsuit, or some of the allegations in this lawsuit, rather. They have since retracted that report or clarified that report, that what they were looking into was a different situation involving Antonio Brown, which they ended up, in the end, not deciding that there wasn't enough to move forward and investigate. So if you see any Allegheny County DA headlines that are still floating out there, it was a situation that has since been kind of rectified.
one last thing before we get into the Steelers game. The Patriots did make some other more minor roster moves. They signed Marshall Newhouse, who will serve as possibly a starting right tackle, possibly a backup offensive tackle. We'll see what the Patriots do with that offensive line situation with Marcus Cannon hurt. They released Obi Melifonwu and put him on their practice squad, so that was kind of a risky move that paid off because now they still get to keep him, and some other kind of random roster practice squad stuff that I've kind of forgotten even happened.
Not super relevant.
But Steelers game on Sunday night, the Patriots beat the Steelers 33-3. Offense looked great even without Antonio Brown or Demaryius Thomas in there. Defense possibly looked even better, only allowing 3 points to the Steelers offense, which I think some people we talked about last week expected them to be at least a test for the Patriots defense. Patriots defense passed it with flying colors. And related to this Antonio Brown news, Philip Dorsett looked great on offense. He caught 4 passes on 4 targets for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was the best game of his NFL career, definitely the best game of his Patriots career. And, I mean, clearly, after watching how the Patriots beat the Steelers, they're in good shape one way or the other without Antonio Brown on offense and defense.
Yeah, not having Antonio Brown in this offense would not sort of alter the way that I feel about this team at all, really. I mean, Antonio Brown was going to be a bonus for this offense. Obviously, having him in there, if he is in there and active, elevates them to a potentially historic level. But even the one that we saw the other night just absolutely shredded the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think have a pretty good defense. This is the same team that held the Patriots to 10 points with a lot of the same faces in there late last season. So this was a real kind of overall masterclass by the Patriots in this game. Their offense was fantastic. They threw a lot of different personnel, different formationing, they used the hurry-up offense a lot, got contributions from a lot of different players. Really, Sony Michel was basically the only kind of guy that you can point to on that offense that say he didn't really have a great night. I think he had 15 carries for 14 yards or something like that.
No catches either.
No
right?
catches,
no
really. No targets. No, wasn't involved in the passing game. Didn't have much success on the ground. But James White and Rex Burkhead both were involved in both. We saw that pony set from them a lot with both of them on the field. Josh McDaniels moving them around a lot. But overall, I think the defense was even more impressive than the offense with just how kind of dominant it was able to be, especially the secondary. I mean, the pass rush was fine, was as good as it needed to be. I believe they only got 1 sack on Ben Roethlisberger, but the secondary just absolutely smothered this Steelers receiving core. And Dante Moncrief, he stinks, man. I said it before the game. I didn't think he was going to last long as that number 2 receiver in the Steelers offense, and I think he finished with 3 catches for 7 yards on 10 targets. Jonathan Jones had a great game. Stephon Gilmore had a great game. Jason McCourty had a great game. Devin McCourty had an interception. Overall, this defense kind of lived up to all the hype it's been receiving overall this summer. What was your big kind of takeaway from this game?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just overall that the offense was really firing on all cylinders. You mentioned the pony sets. They were actually the Patriots' most used offensive formation. That was Brady, James White, Rex Burkhead, Philip Dorsett, Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman, and then the offensive line. They were on the field together for 13 plays. They only averaged 3.5 yards per pass, so they weren't overly effective in those pony sets, but it did definitely show that the Patriots will be willing to do that moving forward to kind of take a tight end off the field. Patriots' only tight end in that game was Ryan Izzo. Did he have a catch?
He had 1 catch.
Yeah.
And then Matt Lacoste dressed, but he did not play.
Right. Josh Gordon was kind of used in a Gronk-like role. He was used in the slot more than he's ever been used in a game with the Patriots. He caught a big pass with a seam route out of the slot. He was kind of having defenders bounce off of him a little bit. I thought it was notable that Chris Collinsworth said that Josh Gordon weighs 240 pounds because
he looks big out there.
He does look big, and I mean he's listed at 225. He certainly looks like he's bulked up since the end of last season, but 240 pounds puts him in that kind of tight end size category. I'm not sure if he's quite 240, but I wouldn't really be surprised, and the Patriots could kind of use him like a tight end moving forward. One other thing on offense is that Marcus Cannon did get banged up. He suffered a shoulder injury. He was back at practice today, but if he can't play, the way the Patriots handled it in-game was moving Joe Thuney to right tackle. They had Jermaine Illuminor come in at left guard. They could do that in the game coming up on Sunday against the Dolphins. The other option would be to have Corey Cunningham or Marshall Newhouse play right tackle. One other option would be to have
James Ferentz
at center, Ted Karras at left guard, and then Joe Tooney at right tackle. And that would possibly kill two birds with one stone, since Ted Karras was kind of floating some shotgun snaps to Tom Brady. It wasn't a consistent issue, but it was an inconsistent issue because Ted Karras was having some line drives thrown back to Tom Brady. He did have some floaters, like I said. You might be able to get some more consistent snapping out of James Ferentz, but he's also probably the weakest player that the Patriots have on their offensive line. So my prediction, if Cannon can't play, is that either Newhouse or Cunningham plays that right tackle role, but we'll basically just have to wait to see what happens on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that would be the simplest fix.
Yeah.
Don't really know what to expect from Corey Cunningham. He started a couple games in his career for the Arizona Cardinals over the last year? I think he started a few.
He was playing left tackle, but then he played right tackle in the preseason this year. Yeah.
And then Newhouse has been a starter a bunch of places over the years, but I think his play has kind of declined over the last couple of seasons.
In and out of the league, yeah. I mean, he was a free agent in, September 11.
So the good news for the Patriots in this situation is that, according to reports, Marcus Cannon's injury is not considered season-threatening or kind of having any long-term significance, and he was out there at practice today, so not bad enough to keep him off the practice field, and hopefully for the Patriots, not bad enough to keep him out of the lineup for too long. For
sure. Anything else pressing out of that Steelers game for you?
I think we pretty much covered it. Honestly, with how quickly news comes about around here, it feels like the Steelers game was like a week ago already.
Yeah, it really does. So the Patriots are playing the Dolphins. Dolphins got smoked by the Baltimore Ravens. What was the score of that game?
59-10.
Not great, Bob. Patriots former linebackers coach and defensive play caller Brian Flores is the head coach of the Dolphins. Everyone expected the Dolphins to be pretty crappy this year, especially after they traded Laramie Tunsil to the Houston Texans. I'm not sure if people were expecting them to be so bad that they would lose 57-10, 59-10, whatever it was, in week one. But it was pretty ugly.
This was... I watched a little bit of this game on Red Zone before the Patriots played this past weekend, and it looked like Alabama against Savannah State. Like, it was crazy how helpless the Dolphins defense was against this Ravens offense.
Lamar Jackson must have felt right at home going up against like an FCS team in week one.
Lamar Jackson, 17 for 20, 324 yards, 5 touchdowns, perfect passer rating. And, the first play of the game was a 49-yard run by Mark Ingram. They had a 47-yard touchdown pass to Hollywood Brown, an 83-yard touchdown pass to Hollywood Brown. They led, 42-10 at halftime. Yeah. The Ravens ran a fake punt when they were up 35-3. This was just an absolute disaster for Miami.
The Dolphins roster is so bad that I'm actually kind of sitting here trying to figure out how many players the Patriots would actually even put on their roster as upgrades over their current depth chart. And it's not many.
It's not many.
Quarterback, you don't want Fitz or Rosen over Stidham or Brady. Running back, maybe Kenyon Drake over Damian Harris or something. Wide receiver, I don't think you're taking any of those guys. Maybe Albert Wilson. Maybe Devontae Parker. It's a bad roster. You'd want Christian Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins.
I'll give them that.
You'd probably take Xavier Howard.
Yeah.
But
even Rashad Jones, you probably would have put him on that list last year, and he played, 7 snaps on Sunday?
7 snaps, yeah.
Minkah Fitzpatrick was terrible in that game. You probably would have put him on that list, but after watching how bad he did, this team is also kind of filled with Patriots retreads as it is. You've got Trent Harris, who was cut by the Patriots. You've got Ken Webster, who was cut by the Patriots. Eric Rowe, who the Patriots didn't re-sign. Jamal Wiltz, who was a practice squad player with the Patriots, who the Dolphins signed onto their active roster. It's a bad roster.
Yeah, I was looking at this, at all this stuff yesterday, because I was supposed to have a story on this morning, which I kind of pushed back after all the Antonio Brown stuff came out. But just seeing how much this roster has changed since the Miami Miracle game was late last season. I believe it was week 14 last season. 10 players who started in this game against the Ravens were not on the team for that Miami Miracle game. 15 of the players on Miami's current 53-man roster entered the season with 0 games of NFL experience.
How many?
15.
Wow.
27 players, so more than half of their roster, are on rookie contracts. Guys they lost over the offseason: Ryan Tannehill, Kenny Stills, Danny Amendola, Robert Quinn, Cameron Wake, Kiko Alonso, Frank Gore, T.J. McDonald, Laramie Tunsil. The Tunsil and Stills trade to the Texans just a week or two ago was really kind of the hammer that drove the point home that this team is full-on tanking. I mean, they got great value for them. They got 2 first-round draft picks and a second-rounder, but losing your starting left tackle like a week before the season is not ideal. And just the way that they played in this game, again, like I mentioned that it looked like an FCS team playing against a top 10 team. And some of the even bigger issues, like this team isn't talented. I think everybody knew that going in. They weren't going to contend. But it seems like a lot of the issues that they had on Sunday, at least from reading the reports out of Miami, weren't just talent-based. A lot of people are pretty unhappy with the way Brian Flores and his staff handled this game. You mentioned that Rashad Jones only played 6 snaps. Kenyon Drake only had 5 carries. I believe Raekwon McMillan, who was one of their starting linebackers, had a very reduced role. And people have been pretty critical of the fact that the game plan for this game from Flores and his coaching staff was to load up the box against the Ravens, which is a smart strategy on its surface, kind of going into the season, because Lamar Jackson really had trouble throwing the ball last season, and the Ravens were one of the best teams running the ball. But when he immediately comes out and just starts torching you with all these long touchdowns, they didn't adjust until late in the third quarter.
Right.
And I think those two things together, where it doesn't seem like, even though the roster is bad, it doesn't seem like they're utilizing it in the right way to win games, which I think is why you've seen some of these reports already that some of the players on this Dolphins team are like, get me the hell out of here. Like, this team, if we're going to have a bad roster and we're not going to be kind of put in position to at least attempt to win games, like, what are we doing here? So,
yeah, I mean, especially those guys, like you mentioned, they have so many on rookie contracts. The guys who are on, like, the 3rd or 4th year of those rookie contracts, who probably aren't going to be able to see this out, probably aren't going to, if they're not talented enough where the Dolphins are going to want to re-sign them and build around them, then they probably are thinking, like, I'm not getting paid enough to do this. Yeah. As you mentioned, or as we both mentioned, Laramie Tunsil was traded right before the season. They've got Jesse Davis, who was a starting right guard, as their starting left tackle this season. He was a tackle in college, but an undrafted free agent out of Idaho in 2015 now is the team's starting left tackle. And it's not even like he was one of the league's top right guards last year either. He was not a very good player. So
3/5 of their offensive line is new this year, I believe. Daniel Kilgore didn't play in last year's game, but he was on the team last season. But yeah, so really kind of a complete and total overhaul. I think watching the first kind of, I went back and watched this game on NFL Game Pass yesterday, and watching the first 5 minutes just kind of tells you everything that you need to know.
Yeah.
So right at the beginning of the game was, as I mentioned, Mark Ingram, 49 yards, first play of the game. The Ravens go down and end up scoring. So then the Dolphins get the ball back. Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. The very first play, he drops back, throws the ball to Preston Wilson, who I believe is an undrafted rookie receiver. Actually had a nice touchdown catch later in the game.
He had a good preseason, yeah.
But in this, he goes over, throws it to him to the right, and as he throws it, Preston Wilson is blocking the cornerback. So that's just shows that nobody on this team is on the same page. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick threw an interception about 2 plays later, and then the very next play was the first long Hollywood Brown touchdown. So bad times down in Miami. Bill Belichick obviously has done his best to pump up this team, to pump up this Dolphins team this week, as we all expected. And he does correctly point out that the Patriots have had a lot of trouble winning in Miami, even against Dolphins teams that are not very talented. They have never played a Dolphins team that's this untalented.
The Patriots, I think, are favored by like 18 points at this point.
I've seen it as high as 19,
18 or 19 points. I was actually, this is kind of stupid, but I was looking to see what the money line for the Dolphins was, because like all logic is thrown out the window when the Patriots go down to Miami. And if it had been something like plus 3,000, then who cares? Like, throw like $10 down on that. Yeah. It was only like plus 1,200, which at that point it's not ridiculous enough. I think that they just never let it get ridiculous enough because like anything can happen in the NFL.
Yeah.
Where you can make a ton of money off of a money line like that. But it wasn't quite to the point where I was like, yeah, I'll throw down like $10 and try to win 300 or whatever it would have been. But no, I mean, the Patriots should absolutely demolish the Dolphins.
Yeah,
if they don't, then maybe the Antonio Brown controversy has already gotten in the Patriots locker room. I think that's what everyone's going to be writing after this game. But no, the Dolphins have no business winning this game, no matter where the game is played.
Most telling stat of this game, Xavier Howard, who we mentioned earlier, was actually very good in this game. He allowed one catch on one target for 12 yards in 70-something defensive snaps. But I think it was just because Lamar Jackson didn't even look over his way. Because
smartly,
Eric Rowe, Jamal Wiltz, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Walt Aikens, the four of them combined against Lamar Jackson and RG3, who ended up coming into the game in the third quarter. 18 for 18 for 324 yards and 6 touchdowns. And, I mean, we both love Eric Rowe. He's a great dude. He was obviously here for a long time, and he was one of the best guys in this Patriots locker room to talk to during his time here. But, yeah, it was a tough debut. And Jamal Wiltz is a guy who couldn't get off the Patriots practice squad.
Right.
Now played significant snaps in this game and looked like a guy who couldn't get off the Patriots practice squad. I mean, It's rough, man. I have no idea how this team's going to fare against a Patriots offense that looked so talented in this past game, even if it doesn't have Antonio Brown in there.
As I mentioned earlier, like this roster is pretty much filled with a bunch of players that Patriots fans didn't really miss getting off the roster.
I forgot they had Ken Webster too.
Ken Webster, Eric Rowe, Jamal Wiltz, Johnson Batamosi was on the Dolphins. He was traded to them as part of the Larry Tunsil deal, right?
From Houston, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Trent Harris before, who was on the Patriots practice squad all of last season. These are guys who were on the Patriots practice squad last year who really, there was no sign that they possibly could have come up. And now they're actually on the Dolphins' active roster.
Crazy.
So, I mean, it really does show you what kind of talent level the Dolphins are dealing with there. So
shouldn't be hard to play America's favorite game this week, though.
No, I know. America's favorite game, where we take a player that we haven't heard of and we try to guess where they went to school. I usually try to pick a pretty crazy name. There's not a lot of kind of out there names on this team. So have you ever heard of Shaq Calhoun? We've all heard of Shalik Calhoun, who's a Patriots outside linebacker. But have you heard of Shaq Calhoun, who's a guard for the Dolphins?
I have no idea. I've probably seen his name and just confused it with Shalik Calhoun before. But I have no idea where we went to school, so let's try that one out.
All right, so Shaq Calhoun, I'm going to guess, went to, I'm feeling like an ACC school, maybe like UNC for Shaq Calhoun.
I'm going to go with Oregon State. Other side of the country.
All right, let's look this up. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, so I have to do this manually. Mississippi State. SEC guy.
You're kind of in the same general region.
Yeah, southeastern.
Is he a rookie?
He is a rookie.
Calhoun.
All right, let's do one more.
All right, let's do...
you can pick.
Do you know cornerback Chris Lamons?
No, I looked at that name too.
Chris Lamons. I'm going to say... What do I say for Chris Lamons? Florida International.
Ooh, Florida. I'll go Florida Atlantic.
Oh, all right, let's do it. Local kid.
South Carolina.
Damn.
Wow. From Plantation, Florida. So he is actually a local kid. I think that's in South Florida, right? Plantation? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, right in the Miami area.
I can tell you where the former Patriots went to college.
Yes.
I know that Trent Harris went to Miami. I know that Ken Webster went to Ole Miss. I know that Eric Rowe went to Utah. Jamal Wiltz.
I have no idea where Jamal Wiltz went.
I'll come back to that one. Where did Johnson Batamosi go?
Batamosi went to...
Did he go to a Texas school?
Yes, that sounds right. I feel like I know this. I'm going to be angry with myself. Johnson Batamosi.
I can look it up real quick, too. Where did Jamal Wiltz go?
Johnson, he was like Iowa State or something like that. Johnson.
Oh, yeah. Jamal Wiltz was Iowa State.
Hey, all right.
And Johnson Batamosi was Stanford. I forgot about Stanford.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that will do it. At least we got to end with some fun after some serious topics of conversation early in the podcast. But keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. We'll be back next week to recap the Dolphins game and then preview the Patriots' upcoming matchup against the
Jets.
Jets.
Home game against the Jets.
It goes Jets and Bills, right?
Yes.
All right, so keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Codd. Follow Zach on Twitter at Zach Cox NESN. Goodbye.